The issue of access to personal information of police officers and to body camera footage is set to become a major debate at the Denver City Council. The council's safety committee unanimously approved a bill that would strengthen the office of the independent monitor and how much information it can seek from officers. The bill now goes to the full council next week. Patty, this started a whole letter writing campaign from the police union, the Office of the Independent Monitor, the ACLU has been involved. Should be a pretty big fight next week for the City Council. What do you think?
Well, I think that the Sheriff's Department and the cops have to be thrilled every time the VA makes a mistake, because that is the only institution in the Denver area that looks worse right now than what's going on at the police department and with the Denver Sheriff's Office. The Independent Monitor was set up back by Hickenlooper shortly after he became mayor. We've heard pretty good things coming out of the Independent Monitor's office, first Richard Rosenthal and now Nick Mitchell. They don't seem to overstep. They seem to take their jobs very seriously. Certainly Mitchell has, and he's been very busy with the number of complaints he's had to deal with regarding the police department and the sheriff's department. Paul Lopez came up with this plan that I think looks pretty straightforward. It looks like a good idea. This is not a good time for the police union to be fighting the idea of more transparency, especially when there are citizen complaints about the police. When you have the shooting at the moving vehicles, which is a policy that other departments do not endorse. When you have no cameras in those cars, even though other departments have them. When you have the chief of police saying that the body cameras are important, this seems like a good move for City Council to approve.
David, I guess, while I disagree with their stance, I understood why the police union would have this stance and get involved. But I can't imagine any part of the City Council, especially, I guess, for I meant my numbers might be off, the 5 to 7 of them that are running for re-election, that would be behind an idea of getting less information to the Office of the Independent Monitor, especially in the days we're in right now. But I might be crazy. What do you think?
Well, municipal employee unions are enormously powerful around the country in local elections. So getting crossways with the Denver Police Union isn't necessarily an obviously smart political move. I think what's more important is what's going on in the legislature, which is a bill to make it clear what was already really the law, but is ignored by some rogue police officers, to say that citizens have the right to film police activities, and you can't steal somebody's cell phone and erase the video because you don't like what they were filming. That's not just one independent monitor, but thousands of independent monitors. That's sort of the genius of the American system of government, is the people are part of the government on a day-to-day basis. And if the Denver Police Department is still so laggard on body cameras, which are cutting edge, or vehicle cameras, which are quite old now and they still don't have that, then the easiest step we can take to improve independent monitoring is to protect the rights of citizens to film what is going on in public.
Eric, we've made a lot about this on this program, that we're getting into a major municipal election in just a couple of months, and it doesn't seem like a whole lot of people are talking about it. Is this going to become an issue because of the letter campaigns going back and forth, and will there be some contention, or do you think the council just wants to make this happen?
Well, I think it's both. I think council probably wants to make it happen. I think it will be an issue in some council races, particularly where the police union maybe tries to assert itself or has a candidate or tries to assert some power. But again, we don't have a mayor's race where this would normally be the subject of debate. We started with the topic of the VA had against Mike Kaufman. The common denominator there was defensiveness. Well, that common denominator applies here too, and the union and police looked very defensive here. I totally identify with David's point in terms of the bill in the legislature. I'll be curious to see what happens to that bill, but to protect the rights of any individual to use their cell phone camera or whatever camera they happen to be carrying to document events. It strikes me that the net on that has to be overwhelmingly positive. And then back to Mayor Hancock, you know, the re-elected mayor at this point, given that no one out there, save David and Patty's recruitment efforts, no one out there is running against him. At some point, reporters and others have to start asking, what became of that task force he appointed now 6, 7, 8 months ago to reform the police department? They hired a couple high-priced, that was more focused on the sheriff's department, hired a couple high-priced consulting firms, one from East Coast. That thing seems to have gotten awfully sleepy and awfully backburnered. And again, you would hope for someone to force that issue, but absent a political debate, it doesn't get forced.
Pan, wrap it up for us.
You know, this is an interesting situation. I think Eric's right. You've got a lot of defensiveness, but I think the other thing that's happening that we all need to be mindful of is this is really an issue whose time has come. When Hickenlooper first got elected, I co-chaired the task force that put together the Office of the Independent Monitor. So it's been since then, and you know, the office has had some issues, but the current monitor, I think, has done an exceptional job. He hasn't overreached. He's gotten to the heart of some issues, and more importantly, the culture in these various departments that are heavily unionized, as David said, is getting exposed. So a lot of the things you're seeing didn't just happen in the last month or two. Some of this has been building because of the culture that exists, and that culture needs to be changed. And that's what people are saying. That's why you're seeing City Council, I think, appropriately looking at beefing up the powers of the monitor, or at least clarifying what the monitor can do. Part of what's in the proposed bill just reinforces the authority the monitor already has. And I think the state legislative effort, which is important, because now what you're seeing around the country is, I saw some clip the other day where a police officer, 5 officers were handcuffing somebody who was down on the ground somewhere, and one officer ran up to a woman who was filming it and said, "I'm confiscating your phone as evidence of a crime." And he tried to snatch it from her, and she's backing up. And I'm thinking to myself, the only crime she was taping was the way the police department was acting towards her, and the subject they'd already, subdued. So this is changing, and law enforcement really needs to, I think, get comfortable with this and get in step with it, because I don't think people are going to withdraw from wanting more transparency.